Back in 2014, there was an AD carry who became notorious for being arguably the single most powerful marksman in the game by way of his sheer carry potential, which if you compare it to the competition at the time, begins to make a lot of sense. That champion was Lucian. His presence in the metagame was so hotly contested that if I were to look at which champion had the highest peaks in popularity, it wouldn't be Ezreal or even Kai'Sa, it would be this guy. On a routine basis, Lucian sometimes carried a pick rate skyrocketing all the way to 60% or higher, making him the poster child of a marksman and a very stable presence in the metagame. Fast forward more than a decade into the future, and not only do you see him a fraction as often as you used to, but overall sentiments towards the champion are a lot more deflated, with some players believing he hasn't been aging all that well. What exactly happened between then and now to make a champion who used to have north of a 60% play rate now struggle to reach even 15? While it's true the AD carry metagame is cyclical in nature, often rotating a handful of marksmen in and out of relevance, Lucian just doesn't really carry that same dominance everyone associated him with anymore. We're gonna figure out exactly why that's the case. To better understand how he quote-unquote fell off as a champion, we'll first highlight what made him so commanding in the first place. Things begin to make a lot more sense when you consider that Lucian came out in mid-season 3, at a time when stuff like random mobility, 1v9 potential, and every semblance of power and feature creep you can think of were still far from an issue. The majority of ADCs in the game at the time were characterized by having a damaging ability, a utility option, and then some kind of escape or defense. Tristana, Sivir, Ashe, Twitch, Corki, Graves back when he was an ADC, Ezreal, Kog'Maw, Caitlyn, Misfortune, all members of the old guard. Across the entire class, none of these champions were all that strong in the early to mid game, especially the ones that didn't have any mobility to them. The point of marksman was to be your late game insurance, coming online by 3 to 4 items to really start hammering out DPS. Such was the primary reason for Lucian standing out the way he did. He was an interesting mixture between a crit scaling marksman but also an ability casting one. Lightslinger acted as a spellblade passive of sorts, causing his next auto attack to fire 2 shots after using a skill. Though he still followed the conventional 1 damage, 1 utility, and 1 dash or defensive tool, the nature of his passive gave him exceptional front-loading pressure in his combo. By chaining his abilities together, he could rapidly fire off multiple auto attacks in quick succession to deal significant damage even early game, and with this dash cleansing all slows and having a cooldown reset if he killed someone during his ultimate, Lucian had some of the best combat mobility in the entire game, being able to avoid critical enemy attacks, chase after opponents, or kite pursuers, all while dishing tons of damage. His ultimate also played into a similar distinction. While most other marksman ultimates were steroids, big teamfight ultimates, or most commonly global ones, Calling presented a more practical skirmish and even dueling-oriented ability, letting him rapid-fire a stream of bullets in a straight line during which he could move and even dash while casting. It acted as a more concentrated single-target version of Misfortune's bullet time. Relative to when he came out, Lucian offered a more fluid experience when playing a marksman, and may have potentially been the first ever instance of a supposed independent marksman, an AD carry who could stand on their own, not needing intensive care from his support. To call him overpowered was kind of an understatement. Cleansing any slow by using Relentless Pursuit made him extremely difficult to catch unless you had point-and-click CC, and if you were in a position to kill multiple targets in a single ultimate, he had by far the best advantage state of any marksman period. Because of how strong he was, the better part of Season 4 was spent basically screwing him over, giving him almost the same treatment both rework Akali and Irelia were given, where they had to strip him of so much stuff to make him not as overpowered. In 4.12, Lucian's attack range was cut from 550 to 500, drastically reducing his margin of safety. They also took away the reset on his dash and replaced it with a cooldown refund mechanic, which was initially intended to make him less dependent on ultimate to fight and allow for more general mobility in combat. But these nerfs proved insufficient, and in subsequent patches he lost a slow cleanse on his dash. Said dash was given a mana cost. Ardent Blaze, which used to have an AD ratio, now no longer had one. Lightslinger lost a ton of early game value, and you can only hold on to the empowered double shot for half the time. Combining all these nerfs together, Lucian went from one of the best AD carries in the game to laughably one of the worst. I actually joined the game in early Season 5, and I remember everyone across League was saying this guy was horrible even though he looked really strong and really cool. Now that I know what happened to him last year, I can see why they thought that way. From 2016 to 2017, there was somewhat of a renaissance for Lucian, but not in the way people think. Up until that point, Lucian's build was identical to that of other marksmen, focusing on crit chance and attack speed to act as your basic auto attacker like everyone else, in addition to the culling scaling the number of shots based on attack speed. But following all the nerfs he received, namely to his early game, the part of the game where he should be stronger than everyone else, Lucian ended up being a downgrade over other marksman options who could survive lane against him and scale him in the long run. So when the marksman class update came out in preseason 6, Lucian was given a minor adjustment to his playstyle, namely, culling was made to fire a flat number of shots and scale off total AD instead of bonus AD, noticeably improving his early to mid game. It was at this point Lucian began to transition from a crit scaling marksman into more of an early to mid game skirmisher through the infamous Ghostblade Black Cleaver build. In the same update as the marksman rework, Ghostblade was adjusted to no longer give crit chance and instead provide a big chunk of base AD. Moreover, Black Cleaver's recipe changed to give less HP but more AD, essentially improving its offensive capability. Put together, Lucian forewent going traditional attack speed and crit in favor of pure damage, allowing him to overpower the competition early game by exploiting the fact that even without attack speed, his passive enabled him to attack extremely fast in short bursts. He could dish out tons of damage and even deal with tanks and bruisers by way of the early armor penetration, whereas other ADCs didn't have the luxury of getting their armor pen item until their 4th or 3rd item at the earliest. This new direction ended up being a landmark success in revitalizing Lucian, so much so that they actually had to nerf him pretty heavily again to keep him in line. Notable about these nerfs is just what they went after: range. Culling and Piercing Light Bolt lost 200 range and Ardent Blaze lost 100. That when combined with this auto attack range having been lowered to 500, and while these nerfs were not all that noticeable right away, they did lay the foundation for his eventual decline later down the road. At the same time as all of this, a new generation of AD carries entered the fray. 2015 onwards oversaw a more innovative approach to marksman design, beginning with Callista, an AD carry capable of microdashing after every single auto attack, giving her theoretically some of the best combat mobility out of any marksman by an overwhelming margin. Then after came Jhin, the first marksman to focus entirely on power, not attack speed, and even carrying long-range utility. Saya was the first marksman to possess dynamic AoE crowd control adjacent to her actual DPS, not to mention a target ability, which at the time was unprecedented to see on a marksman. To be fair, most of these marksmen are still beholden to the same dependence on the team to function properly, and Lucian being one of those quote-unquote independent marksmen still held true up until then. That all changed when Kai'Sa came out. Kai'Sa, for all intents and purposes, was the turning point for what a marksman was capable of. Thanks to her high DPS and % health damage on her passive, many people compared her to Vayne for being a hyper carry who could shred through just about any champion in the game. Couple that with her equal mixture of ability and auto attack damage, and Kai'Sa was a complete force in the metagame when she first came out, just like how Lucian was well ahead of his time when he came out. From that point onward, the limits of what a marksman could reach continued to push higher and higher and higher. More capabilities, more scaling, more tricks, and more options than ever before. Senna, who is a marksman that could double as a support. Aphelios with 5 different weapons. Samira, who came off more of a diver than an actual marksman. Zeri, who is a hyper-tempo caster-based marksman. Neela, a melee skirmisher who built like a marksman. Smolder, Yunara, the list goes on and on. What this ultimately represented was a tangible sense of power and feature creep in the marksman class. While I'm by no means implying the new generation of AD carries are infinitely better than the old one, what I am saying is that their overall capabilities on paper are of a pedigree above what they used to have. How this negatively affected Lucian was that, in every which way you can think of, he's been functionally superseded by this generation. Lucian by definition is a short-range high mobility AD carry. What he lacks in effective reach he makes up for with strong burst and ability to avoid enemy attacks. It's high risk, high reward that not just encourages but necessitates on-the-fly adaptation and reactions to pilot him properly. People were drawn to Lucian when he came out for the simple reason that he offered something no other AD carry had before: self-sufficiency. Sure, his base stats and whatnot are calibrated to be that of a marksman. Under no circumstances can he go toe-to-toe with a Juggernaut or Assassin in a head-on stat check, but he can certainly fare a lot better than his peers. That reasoning was why Lucian became so popular. His performance wasn't anywhere near as contingent on circumstance relative to other AD carries. Even compared to Ezreal, Draven, and Corki, marksmen who can also hold their own relatively well, Lucian was seen as that guy who could solo the game if he needed to, subsequently leading to the rise of Lucian mid. For a time during the early 2020s, players began to realize that Lucian was good enough to be taken as a mid laner and occasionally top. Though he suffered from short range, especially against mages, he possessed a distinct advantage that, when exploited, gave him a very strong laning phase against the mid lane competition. While both mages and assassins can easily destroy him in the mid to late game, that's if they can get there without falling too far behind. Lucian's advantage was that against assassins who were all primarily melee, he could bully them in lane by poking them out while reserving his dash to avoid whatever key skill shot assassins depended on to engage or apply damage. Meanwhile, against mages, Lucian could apply lots of pressure immediately thanks to being auto-attack based, DPS that doesn't depend on a resource, whereas mages, up until Lost Chapter or tier at least, can only use their abilities so many times before they're completely exhausted of pressure. During that window, Lucian can push an advantage and snowball that way. That, and with most mages being skill shot reliant, an instant free target dash like Relentless Pursuit makes Lucian quite difficult to pin down. Essentially, Lucian Moon was effective for carrying enough early game pressure and having the right combination of range and mobility to beat down mages and assassins before they could spike. Ironically, the reason Lucian Mid became so popular had more to do with him actually being pretty weak in bot lane with the rise of all the new marksmen, and here's where you can begin to see him run into headwinds. Next to Sivir, Lucian has the shortest attack range out of any conventional marksman in League. You might think 50 range isn't the end of the world, but if you think about it, 50 range means if Lucian were to walk up to someone to auto-attack them, they will always get to shoot first, since he needs to walk 50 units more to get to them, which makes a bigger difference than you think. Secondarily, Lucian doesn't possess anything particularly noteworthy. He lacks any crowd control, utility, or even slow in his toolkit, only damage. To his credit, again thanks to Lightslinger, Lucian's auto attacks are significantly more hit for a hit on account of doing 1.5 times an auto's damage plus any on-hit benefits that come from it. In the time any other marksman gets out 5 autos, Lucian can pump out 8 or 9. However, over the years, other marksmen have gotten better at handling him. Any AD carry who struggles against him in lane will almost with all certainty outscale him. The main reason being, Lightslinger goes from being his strongest asset to his weakest, because there's only so much you can get out of it. He can only tap into his passive as often as he can cast abilities, and abilities naturally don't have the same attack frequency as pure attack speed. On paper, Lucian does quite well into Vayne, Twitch, Jinx, Yunara, Kai'Sa, and lane, but over time, they all begin to outskill him. Vayne carries more destructive power per auto attack, especially by way of her true damage, not to mention more mobility than him thanks to Tumble being a far lower unconditional cooldown. Kai'Sa gains more DPS, more durability, stealth to reposition, and hybrid damage to make her difficult to itemize against. When Twitch pops ultimate, he can kill Lucian before the latter can even get within range to attack him. Yunara has AoE damage out the ass to contribute more overall DPS in a fight, with the same applying to Jinx, who is the teamfight marksman. The flip side isn't all that appealing either. Other AD carries with a decent early game like Tristana, Draven, Samira, and Caitlyn can either out-trade him, outrange him, or out-all-in him, with some of them outscaling him in addition to that. Basically, Lucian migrated to mid lane for a time not just due to mid lane having more favorable conditions, but because it was actually worse to play him in bot lane. Unfortunately for him, the community and Riot themselves aren't too keen on the idea of a marksman being played where they aren't supposed to. To ensure he was more locked into bot lane, they introduced a new component to Lightslinger, causing ally buffs or crowd control to give Lucian bonus on-hit magic damage on his next attacks, effectively forcing him to play with a support. To further pigeonhole him into playing like a marksman, they made the number of additional shots on calling depend on crit chance instead of a flat amount, altogether eliminating any option for say lethality Lucian or even stuff like on-hit Lucian. He had to build crit, naturally hamstringing how strong he could be early. In other words, they were forcing Lucian to build and play like a weak early game marksman who scales well into late game, despite getting outscaled by literally every marksman in the game besides maybe Draven, who beats him in lane anyway. There were a few moments in the past where he performed exceptionally well, such as when Nami got buffed to apply her bonus magic damage off abilities in addition to auto attacks, but Riot went ahead and nerfed that as well. Every single time Lucian was given a chance to shine, possibly from the trauma caused by his extreme popularity in the early 2010s, Riot's been pretty quick to prevent him from enjoying lasting success. The end result is an ADC who, in my opinion, has gotten power crept. We live in an age now where mobility has become the norm on marksmen, and playstyles have expanded to include more unorthodox ways to fight like Samira, Neela, and Smolder. Even older AD carries have aged a lot better than he did. Caitlyn with her long-range headshots, Sivir carrying AoE pressure and teamfight utility, Ezreal with his neutral game. Every marksman at this point has a way to better apply their pressure than him, whether more easily, more heavily, or more quickly. The advent of mages in bot lane only exacerbated this issue. Lucian gets destroyed by mages. He loses to Swain, Mel, Hui, Ziggs, Brand, Seraphine, champions he would have beaten if it was mid lane 1v1, but supports can protect mages enough to power spike or help them set up a lot better. Finally, the AD carry role quest. Now that ADCs get access to gold more quickly, the time frame Lucian has to establish an early game lead has grown even narrower. So not only has the competition gotten stiffer down in bot lane, but even the champs Lucian can beat are able to close the gap between him and them significantly faster, ultimately resulting in a champion that, while people still play him, he's not a why-no-one-plays champion, not by a long shot, when you consider where he used to be. It's been quite the downfall. What do you guys think about Lucian? Do you feel like I'm exaggerating on how hard he fell off, or do you agree with my points? Feel free to share in the comments down below. That'll be all for today though, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other champion discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.